Find the best odds in the country only on the free PropSwap app. Kevin Bowen here. You buy directly from other sports bettors who are ready to cash out. Join the rest of us and go to PropSwap.com right now.
We're back. We're battling on Kevin's Corner. Voice hanging on by a thread, but we're going to gut it out because you just got to be tough in today's world. And Rosie Bowe needs a tough father, and a scratchy voice cannot mean Kevin Bowen's weak. So here we are, Chris Presley across the way, Kevin Bowen in studio. We are 1 week away from Beers with Bowen. We are 1 week and 1 day away from the NFL Draft. Beers with Bowen next Wednesday, April 28th, 8 o'clock at night. I can't wait.
I'm so looking forward to it.
It's my favorite Beers with Bowen we do every year. I love it.
Yeah, you're our Todd McShay. You're our local Todd McShay, and
yeah, I don't know about that, but it's gonna be a great turnout. YouTube will be live there as well. I hope we have some prizes to give away, and so we usually save kind of draft scenarios for Beers with Bowen. That's one of my favorite things to look at, and kind of weigh, and pros and cons and whatnot. So we'll get into those next week on Beers with Bowen. No podcast next week. Just all Beers with Bowen.
Right.
So you guys got to check that out Wednesday night live at 8 p.m. Today's podcast, I feel like you guys have really enjoyed a couple guests that we've had. And so we're going to have Lance Zierlein, who is probably the draft analyst that has the best relationship with Chris Ballard. So I always think that's interesting.
Yep.
I was filling in today for Dan Dockich and yesterday and had Lance on the show. So we'll throw that in here. And then I really want to go over a lot of prospects, Chris. I know we've waited a little bit of time, try to be all-encompassing as we can prospect-wise, and doing some research. So focusing on the positions that I think are kind of biggest need to the Colts, and we'll go there with those positions. And as always, Twitter questions, man.
Yeah, and with Beers with Bowen, the way that we've been projecting this year in terms of right after a podcast, things changing, it'll be interesting to see if anything shakes up after Beers with Bowen. Obviously, going into the draft, who knows what the Colts are going to do, and that's what makes it difficult to project.
Yeah, I mean, and that's why we love the draft.
Yeah.
There's the unknown of it, and you never know until the team before you's picking and whatnot. So we'll hit on a lot of that next week and get in some prospects today.
Yeah, let's talk about those prospects. As we get closer, certain people start to pop out among the rest of the other talent. You start to see different pro days, start to listen to interviews, things of that nature. Let's start with the wide receiver core. Who has caught your eye that might not be on certain people's radar, or might, but that you are kind of honing in on?
Yeah, and the prospects that I think we'll go over today, Chris, will just kind of be taking these positions, wide out being a need. We'll get in some others as well, and try to assign where I feel like the Colts should look into that position. I know that's not how necessarily it comes off the board, but there's no point in time in debating, whatever, Jalen Waddle and Devontae Smith and Jamar Chase. So guys that I like, as early as day 2, I really like Elijah Moore out of Ole Miss. We've talked about Rondale Moore as well. Amari Rodgers from Clemson's just kind of a different slot, more of a possession guy, but I just feel like he's going to be so reliable for an NFL team as well. So I'm thinking early day 3, can one of these guys fall? Tylan Wallace out of Oklahoma State is who I really like in that range. Now, again, he might not fall that far, but tons of touchdown production, big plays, not a lot of drops. You got to like that. Out of the SEC, Seth Williams from Auburn, kind of a bigger wideout a little bit there. I think at times you watched him and you're like, wow, how is there not more production? So, I mean, you got to tap into some of that. But I think a possession wideout, I like him a little bit. Maybe a little bit later in the draft. Tamorian Terry out of Florida State had some huge plays in college. And as you'll get with any day 3 prospects that we're debating, there's obvious flaws.
Yeah.
And so you got to sift through some of that. And then Jalen Darden, super small guy out of North Texas. I don't mean like small college, like small in stature, but very gadgety. He had 19 touchdowns in 9 games last year. Like, I don't care where you're playing.
Yeah.
But that's a ton of production. So he would be somebody that I think you look at as kind of a gadgety guy in the return game as well. So, again, I don't view wideout as like, oh my gosh, must take. I know some people want to see them take it very high. But I think that you can rely on the depth that will annually be there at that position. So those are some names I like at wideout.
Yeah, big Amari Rogers guy. Obviously, his father was the first football jersey that I owned, T. Martin, coming out of Tennessee.
Oh, shout out to T.
Yeah.
He's now what, OC at USC? Is that right?
He was the OC at USC, then he moved to offense. He moved to Tennessee, and now I can't remember where he went once we got the new regime in, but
that's the last national title for the Vols, right? Or the last BCS was it the last BCS national title?
Yeah.
Was Tennessee
it was year one, yeah.
Yeah.
All right, tight end. Let's jump into that because that's a very interesting draft dynamic as we have a Twitter question about that later as well.
Yeah, tight end and not great draft depth either.
Yeah.
I think you got to acknowledge that. So, I like Brevin Jordan out of Miami. You'll hear from Lance Zierlein a little bit later. Not as big of a Brevin Jordan fan as me. I like after the catch. And, I want to get pretty niche specific at tight end. I want to get the receiving threat, the guy that can make a play with the ball in his hands type of thing. Ebron, but take it to a little bit of another level. I think he's a better blocker than he gets credit for. Tommy Tremble, of course, is the popular name. Tremble, move him all over the field. That's attractive. But, man, he just had some moments at Notre Dame, some drops, and I just felt like I was left wanting so much more at Notre Dame that I could be extremely biased here, but I feel like that might be, kind of clouding my vision and be like, oh, I'm going to be left wanting more in the NFL, Whereas, you might all of a sudden show up and you might be a great player and a versatile guy that was playing behind some deeper tight ends and whatever. It's hard for a tight end to necessarily really flourish in the college game, not named Kyle Pitts.
Mm-hmm.
There's a tight end out of UCF that's pretty skinny, Jacob Harris. Definitely needs weight, but a really good special teams player, and I think kind of that hybrid wide-out tight end mold. So I like just kind of giving another chess piece.
Yeah.
That's how I look at tight end in this whatever third hybrid role. Kenny Yeboah out of Ole Miss is another kind of later pick option, transferred to Ole Miss, and he's a guy that I like as well. So again, I know it's not great depth. It's got to be tapped into, in my opinion, though, Chris. And if you took Brevin Jordan in round 2, I wouldn't lose too much sleep over it. Maybe you trade back. Maybe 54 overall is a little bit too much for him or too early for him. But he's a guy that I do like.
We obviously have a lot of positions to get through, but real quick, how many of these positions, in terms of, you mentioned the special teams, does their potential on special teams help them get drafted, especially day 3?
Yeah, I think definitely. Tight end would be one of those positions. Wide out, I think, would be another position. Linebacker is always very popular in that road as well. So, for the most part, I think your day 3 picks, it's kind of an added bonus.
Mm-hmm.
If you on day 2, you're drafting guys to be starters. So the Jacob Harris, to me, it's more of a day 3 pick. But yeah, that is a good point.
Let's get to the 2 biggest needs that, most Colts fans, we've talked about 1A, 1B in terms of flip-flopping, offensive tackle, defensive end. Break those downs in terms of, start with tackle and then jump to defensive end for guys that have kind of caught your eye.
Yeah, Rick Venturi texted me earlier today and mentioned the Lance Zierlein interview and said he really enjoyed it. And so him and I started talking about O-line and edge rush. And he really likes, feels like 3 are in a class by themselves on the O-line. Penei Sewell, Rashawn Slater, and then Vera Tucker out of USC. Those 3, it'd be a dream if one of them was there at 21. But outside of that, I got the impression from him he wasn't as high on Christian Darrisaw as maybe some of these mocks are. When you hear the term lazy with an offensive lineman, I think you get worried. This is, I worry about me being lazy at whatever, 195, 200 pounds, 300 and some pounds, and you're lazy, and you're playing the NFL, that's a little bit worrisome. Now, does the presence of Quentin Nelson change your laziness or how much of a finisher you are in plays? Because there's obviously a lot to like about Darrisaw and what he did at Virginia Tech because he's played so much left tackle there. Now, Tevin Jenkins from Oklahoma State is probably who I like the most, but again, mostly a right tackle. Now, played some left, but mostly a right. Do you feel like he can make the switch to left? Mauler, just a finisher. I think brings some tough and tenacity that I see more of a bully. And I like. I would say the guy that I'm probably far along with and do like is Sam Cosmi out of Texas. Kind of grew into his body, so more of a natural athlete, great footwork. Has some definite left tackle experience. Was a captain at Texas, so we know what that means to Chris Ballard. And so those are things all to keep in mind. At 21, is it too early? Is 54 too late? Probably. So finding that sweet spot there. But he's a name that I like. Obviously, Liam Eichenberg gets brought up a lot. I think he's solid. I know that sounds like negative connotation, but he's solid. I don't know if he'll be top 5, top 10 tackle. Are you good with solid, or do you want a little bit more? I guess that's a question that you have to have there. If you're going to wait till the second round, Joe Wrights we had on earlier today, he mentioned Dylan Radins out of North Dakota State. He's a guy that Senior Bowl had a really strong week there. Again, we know what Chris thinks of that week and everything. And then James Hudson out of Cincinnati, a little bit raw, had some penalties, but hasn't played a whole lot of tackle, and he's a pretty good athlete there as well. So, to me, if you're going to make me pick out of Darisaw, Jenkins, Cosmi, it's pretty even. Jenkins, but, can he play left tackle? Cosmi is a guy that I like, from an athletic footwork standpoint. So that's the route that I would probably go.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned the whole lazy or finish thing, because that was my first thought as well. It's like, well, if you get next to Quentin Nelson and those guys hold you accountable, do you exceed expectations?
That could whip you into shape real quick.
Well, let's jump to the other side of the ball with the defensive ends.
Yeah, the one that I think everyone is enamored with trait-wise is Jason Oweh, and that's who Zierlein had mocked to the Colts at 21. You can't teach it, Chris. I mean, it's stupid traits that he has. 4.3, crazy get off, the broad jump, the 3-cone. And Chris Ballard salivates over traits. We know that. So, can you get past the production? No sacks last year in 7 games. I think he only started once his first 2 years at Penn State. If you can get past that, believe in your coaching, believe in your player development. That is what's going to say a lot, because all these pass rushers, and Rick and I were talking about this when we were texting earlier today, all these rushers are flawed. So you're going to have negative feedback on all of them. You got to have internal belief that your development can get the guy there. To me, Kwity Paye probably blends the best of great traits and some production. Now, it's not perfect, but I kind of like his build of more of a compact rusher. I think he's got some toughness to play on 3 downs. Gregory Rousseau, I know has kind of gotten a bad knock on him lately, I feel like. Maybe didn't test as well at his pro day like Jalen Phillips, of course, did. But hell, I mean, is Gregory Rousseau at 6'7" and 300, is he Calais Campbell?
Yeah.
Because if he's Calais Campbell, I want him on my football team.
Yeah.
And, I mean, that next to DeForest Buckner,
right.
You could get behind that. Phillips, you're obsessed with it, Chris. You love the traits, you love the production, but this dude has retired already from the game of football.
Yeah.
For concussions.
Yeah.
Obviously, I'd have to sift into it and look into it a little bit more. He'd be off my board. That's just how I would have to look at it. In today's age of the NFL, I don't think you can take that risk.
No, I agree.
And you hate it because, again, there are some mouth-watering characteristics he brings to the rush position, but that would be the worry there. I really like Joe Tryon, probably more of a second-round pick. I don't love that he opted out, but, he seems like a strong character. He's got some good measurables. Some later-round guys that kind of caught my eye, Patrick Jones, Joshua Kando, Shaka Toney for Penn State as well. Again, I mean, these are kind of late-round guys, but they caught my eye as well.
And then finally, the back half of that defense, corners and safeties, who are guys there that are standing out to you?
Boy, I do love J.C. Horn. I mean, I know corner 21 might not be the pick, and Greg Newsome is intriguing to me as well. Mm-hmm. Not a lot of picks when we talk about ball production, but a lot of passes defensed. A few injuries there, but he's a guy that's intriguing. A couple names, Eric Stokes out of Georgia, Paulson Adebo out of Stanford. Just, again, early day 3 maybe. I don't know, middle of day 3. Safety-wise, I don't know if he's going to get to day 3, but, man, every time I watched IU this year, I thought Jamar Johnson played pretty good football for him. Rangy. And I guess, what are you looking for at safety?
Right.
Are you looking for a range? Are you looking for the box? Are you looking for the Julian Blackmon versatile again? I don't know. Like, I could probably be talked into a lot of things. But he's a guy that I think you could go with. Davine Diablo out of Virginia Tech, probably more of a box safety if you wanted to go that route. So those are just a few names, kind of secondary-wise, that, round 4, round 5, somewhere around then, I could kind of see them coming off the board.
Yeah, and based off safety, were you surprised that Odom signed the 10-year signs?
Yeah.
Were just because obviously some of his displeasure, but like we knew, he wasn't probably going to find a contract better than what the Colts are going to offer him.
Right, he was chirping a little bit on social media, but yeah, again, are people really going to overpay that much for a special teamer? No.
Yeah.
So, wasn't surprised. I guess we haven't talked since TJ Carey re-signed. I like it. It's funny, Chris, when you look at the blueprint that we carved out back in March, the 4 names we had coming back, they're all back.
Yeah.
Al-Qadim Muhammad, T.Y., Marlon Mack, and now TJ Carey. He was needed. With Rock struggling, he was needed. Now, does this lessen the long-term need? No, long-term need is still there. I mean, TJ Carey and Xavier Rhodes will both turn 31 this year. Both are on 1-year deals. But he is a guy that certainly should help, just be a versatile option for you, which is really important on game days.
Cool. Anyone else?
No, that was it. Those are the prospects that, I like. Curious your guys' thoughts on that. We'll get more into this a little bit. Beers with Bowen and whatnot. Let's hit up that Lance Zierlein interview. This is Lance, NFL draft analyst, NFL.com, on with me earlier this week with Dan Dockich. Again, a great friend of Chris Ballard, so I hope you appreciate this insight.
DD on vacation all week. Kevin Bowen filling in the next 2 days here on the Dan Dockich Show. Let's head to the hotline brought to you by Flight by Yingling. Lance Zierlein, NFL.com, NFL draft analyst, prospects to pros podcast. A must listen for myself every week, and Lance joins us now. Lance, thank you for the time, man. I know it's a busy, busy time of year for you.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Thank you.
Let's start here. In Indy, we've kind of narrowed it down. Left tackle and edge rusher, the 2 biggest needs. Would you feel better about finding a starter at left tackle outside of round 1? Would you feel better at left tackle finding that starter, or would you feel better at edge rusher finding that starter outside of round 1?
Probably a little better at edge rusher at finding a starter, but it is a pretty deep tackle draft. And so that's, one of the advantages. It's rarely a deep tackle draft, but for the first time in really a long time, I think there are some legitimate potential starters in rounds 2 through 4. And so, I do think, left and right, obviously there can be a little bit of a difference, but I think you have some left tackles, some guys who are going to be starting left tackles that maybe pop up even as late as the 3rd round. So I do think the Colts can potentially find that, but this is also, there's some depth in terms of pass rush and typically what the Colts look for out of a pass rusher. So I would say based on those 2 needs, this is actually not a bad draft from a depth standpoint at either position. So that really benefits, the Colts if they choose to trade back or go in a different direction with the first-round pick because they find a player on the board that they just really, really covet. You still have those are 2 positions that you still should have some action on day 2.
Interesting. I know, I think it was your latest mock. I'm not sure if you've posted one since. You had Jason Oweh going to the Colts at number 21. You talk about traits. Oh, boy. I don't know if there's anyone in the draft that maybe sums that up more than him. Certainly traits over production. What is it about Oweh that had you slotted to go to the Colts at 21?
Well, people forget he had 7 sacks a year before, and he's always making tackles in terms of tackles for loss. So he's got a lot of he does have some disruptive production in his background. Everyone focuses on, sack numbers during the pandemic season with a team that frankly was a massive disappointment. But the reality is, from what had me put him A in first round and then B with the Colts, is that he's long-limbed, he's explosive. I know the Colts, Eberflus is kind of that same guy that from the old Chicago Bear type of Rod Marinelli style of up-the-field guys, and 255 pounds, 260 pounds. They don't have to be the 270-pound guys. They want them to be explosive, long-limbed, and to be able to do some things from an athletic standpoint that a lot of players can't do, and that certainly is Jason Oweh. So when you look at the traits, he's there. When you look at the explosiveness, he's there. And I know Chris Ballard and many general managers are big believers in coaches have jobs to do and coaches get paid for a reason, and that reason is to take the talent and to turn it into skilled athleticism, which turns into skilled talent. And so if you're looking at Jason Oweh, he has all the ingredients are there. You just need it just needs to be assembled to make the dish, and that's where the coaching comes in. So if you believe in your coaching, you trust your coaching, you're a little less worried about some of the production unless you see physical inabilities that will maybe preclude a guy from producing. But that doesn't really – there's a skill level that's not quite there all the way for Jason Oweh, but in terms of the ability to do the things he needs to do, that's all there.
It's funny you say that. I feel like in the previous regime, drafting and then player development, once you got those guys in the building, just never on the same page there, and I feel like it's kind of a forgotten part of the draft process. Lance Zierlein, NFL.com, draft analyst, joining us now here on the Dan Dockett Show. How would Oweh compare to a fellow Big Ten rusher in Kwity Paye, who's a guy that I kind of like?
So Kwity Paye has a lot of the same, explosive traits and characteristics. He is bigger from a standpoint of just, broader, more powerful at the line of scrimmage. I think he is more NFL ready to play on snaps 1 and snaps 2 of a drive. He's going to be, I think, a little better fit on the run snaps from a game by game basis. His hand usage is much better than Jason Oweh, so that's another way that he's a little bit different. He's a little bit of a short strider, which concerns me a little bit from a rush standpoint. That's why I think the higher ceiling from a rush standpoint is Jason Oweh. But Kwity Paye is a player who also has the rare physical traits for a guy his size. I got to say, it's not unlike Rashawn Gary. Rashawn Gary had some of the same things, and he did not have big-time productivity all the time. And Kwity Paye, for all the athletic marvel, for the athletic marvel he is and the size and the explosiveness, he doesn't have quite the production that you would expect either. And I don't think he's a real instinctive run defender in terms of his anticipation and ability to get to where the gaps are going to be and to make plays against the run. So I think Kwity is more ready to go, and I think Kwity might be a little safer than Jason Oweh. That's one of the primary differences between those two guys, I think, is Kwity is more likely to be a double than Jason Oweh is to be a home run. But if he's a home run, he's an all-pro player. And I do think Jason Oweh has some traits that are just extraordinarily rare. And Ballard doesn't mind swinging a bat, as you guys know.
Yeah, Lance, you know this full well. Chris's draft history is very strong, but edge rusher has been a position where they've struggled over the last 3 or 4 years. Do you think he's adjusted at all in what he's looking for? It has been heavy trait, heavy get off, seems to be the things that he loves with that edge rush group. Do you think he will or should adjust at all in maybe how he evaluates edge rushers?
No, I think that I think what you look for is, remember where he's taken some of those guys. Toure was a little later in the draft, and I know that he had Tyquan Lewis, who they envision as being an interior rusher, and that has happened. But no, I think Ballard, I think history really bears this out. There's certain physical attributes that are the best for getting after a quarterback, and so I don't think now where he goes to get those picks, what rounds he does it in, how he maneuvers around his own evaluations. It's for he and his staff to determine who the best rushers are. Banigou, to me, I thought that was a little bit of a reach at the time, just because I just didn't think he was strong enough. But I also think that's a potential learning experience as well. They moved him inside the linebacker, and they're trying to find something for Ben. And Ben was a heavy traits swing and miss as an edge rusher. And so, if they learn something, then maybe Jason Owe would not be that guy. But Owe honestly just is a better player on tape than Ben Bannigan was. So I think there's a big difference there. But, no, I don't think you're going to see Ballard change. I think he's a believer in the process, and I think that's one of the strengths of Chris Ballard over some of the other general managers is he's not easily swayed off of a process that he believes in, and that's why you'll have more consistency, I believe, with the Indianapolis Colts. And it's no different than tackle. Like, it's the same concept for an offensive tackle that he has for a defensive end. It's really not different. There's a concept behind it, and he stays with the concept. And I'm all in. I just disagree sometimes with some of the players, just like, I will with any general manager. But the process in which they go about it, I don't have a problem with what Ballard's done so far. It's just a matter of, getting the right players.
Lance, I want to throw a couple quick ones at you before we let you go because I know you're on a bit of a time crunch. At left tackle at 21, starters at that spot. Tevin Jenkins is a guy that I love, but he didn't play a whole lot of left tackle at Oklahoma State. And I feel like here locally, a lot of fans have seen a popular selection be Christian Darrisaw out of Virginia Tech. Thoughts on those two guys?
I like Darrisaw as a left tackle. I think he's really talented. He's just kind of a slow burn player who doesn't always finish blocks and can get a little bit lazy sometimes, quite frankly. And, the talent is there, though. He's very talented. Jenkins, my problem with Jenkins is I don't know if he's an NFL left tackle. So I do know Christian Darrisaw is an NFL left tackle, at least from a physical standpoint, the ability, all of that. I don't think that's really the case with Jenkins, and that would be one of my concerns with Jenkins is playing him out at left tackle on a full-time basis. I'm not sure I'm in on that. I do like Elijah Vera Tucker a little bit better as a potential left tackle, and he has short arms, which is not something that Ballard typically is going to look for from a trait standpoint. He's very good at the position. He understands how to play left tackle. He's great with his timing and his hands and the tightness of his hands and his punch. My dad worked with him a little bit. He's a longtime NFL and college football offensive line coach. Worked with Elijah Vera Tucker, and he's got some concerns about arm length, but he just said, the way he plays longer than the arm length. So, frankly, if you're looking for a left tackle, it wouldn't be Jenkins. You'd rather swing the bat on a guy like Elijah Vera Tucker because even though he lacks the arm length, he's got a good core, base and anchor that he can play with. And if he misses, you can just bump him down inside the guard where he'll be a long-time starter, or even swing him out to right tackle and, look at left tackle via free agency or the draft next year. But there's still some left tackle potential guys you've got some guys still in rounds 2 and rounds 3. So don't reach at 21. Wait and let it come to you. And I think that's what you'll see I think you'll see the Colts let it come to them as it pertains to offensive line.
And then lastly, Lance, tight end wise, I know it's not a great depth class. Obviously, Kyle Pitts is, high atop Mount Rushmore all by himself. But guys like Brevin Jordan, Tommy Tremble, could the Colts find, a more of a receiving threat at tight end, maybe late day 2, early day 3?
Possibly. I'm not a big fan of the tight end class. I think Tremble's a guy that I like a lot. He's tough. Now that smells like a Chris Ballard potential guy, but because Tremble will block you, you can play him on the move. He gives a guy like Frank Reich an opportunity to really flex his muscles a little bit from the standpoint of having an athlete who can be a move tight end. You can play him on the line. You can play him off the ball to wing. You can have him lead blocking. He can get out in space. He's got good speed, and he's tough. And I think that he's the kind of guy that offers upside, and it offers those traits that we talked about. Just needs to catch football. His hands just aren't great. That's a little bit of a problem, but he's got a lot of potential, and he's a dog too. He'll get after you. So Trimble's a guy that I would love for the Colts in the third, but I think he's going to go late second to early third, so you have to be in position to make that happen. But I like him. Not as big a Brevin Jordan fan personally. I don't think he really is going to move the needle as much for what the Colts like to do.
Lance, anything we should keep an eye out for coverage-wise? I'm sure you got one more mock in you, don't you?
I'll probably do one more the week of the draft, and I'll be tightening up the draft profiles at NFL.com. If you go to draft and go to prospects under that, you can find all my scouting reports with 475 players, and I'll be adding draft projections based on conversations I'm having with teams from around the league. And so hopefully you get a better understanding of where I believe guys should go based on the knowledge I have.
475. Jesus.
I usually go 500, but it was an off year this year.
Yeah, slacking. I guess blame it on the pandemic. Lance Zierlein, awesome insight. Prospects to Pros is the podcast as well with Dane Brugler, who we had on last week. Lance, thank you for the time, man.
You got it. Thanks a lot.
That's Lance Zierlein right there on the hotline. Brought to you by Flight by Yingling, the next generation of light beer.
Well, there you go. Lance Zierlein joining us. What do you think?
I like the insight. I liked, again, how you mentioned prior to going into that interview, just his thoughts on some of the defensive end talent that might fall to us, and also him talking about the offensive tackle class.
Yeah, he I think he does really good work. That number of prospects that he's been writing up is a big number.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, only 250 or so get drafted, but you got to have full preparation there.
Yep.
You never know what those names are going to be called on day 3, so hope you guys enjoyed that.
Well, Kev, should we jump into Twitter questions?
Let's do it, man.
All right. The first one comes from Alec. What positions can we rule out entirely round 1? And if the board doesn't fall the way that we hope and we go best player available, what positions can we rule out?
Yeah, quarterback, running back. I assume tight end just because I don't see Kyle Pitts falling that far.
Mm-hmm.
I think interior offensive lineman, that's a little too rich for me that early in the draft. Defensive tackle, it sounds like just a horrific defensive tackle class. And I think linebacker and safety, I think you can cross off a lot. When Rick and I were talking earlier today, him and I are in the same belief. The fact that the Colts didn't pay for an edge rusher, / when you look at left tackle, the last 2 years in the draft, mainly the last year especially, but you could go back maybe the year before that. Once Anthony Costanzo starts talking about retirement, you draft a tackle, and you do it a little bit earlier. No tackles drafted last year. And then the year before that, you obviously had Jackson Barton in the 7th round. Jackson Barton's not even on the football team. So it's interesting. We've never seen Ballard draft a tackle. Braden Smith wasn't drafted to play tackle. Right. So we don't really know his traits that he's looking for. But what Rick and I were getting at is you've kind of cornered yourself. 2 picks in the first 120. Don't they have to be left tackle and edge? If you wait, I don't know if you can rely on day 1 starting talent at that spot there. So I know I just named a lot of positions, Alec, but I guess I could maybe see a corner or wide out, but still.
All right, we got a hypothetical from Grady.
Michael?
Not Michael. Well, maybe. You never know.
All right.
In between Brooklyn games, just writing into the show.
He's a Colts fan.
Said no trade backs, even though I'm team trade back. Here's option 1. You sign Russell Okung or Alejandro Villanueva to a 1-year deal to be your left tackle. Then in round 1, you draft an edge. You draft offensive tackle round 2. Draft a tight end in round 4. Or here's option 2. You sign Houston or Ingram to a 1-year deal. Draft an offensive tackle in round 1, edge in round 2, corner in round 4. And by the way, hopes everyone is doing well in Indiana, so it might be Michael Grady.
Hey, thanks, Grady, for checking in. I'm probably that gung-ho on tight end. I'd take option 1. I like edge in round 1.
Mm-hmm.
I do, but, the Okung, Villanueva, okay, sure. But I just think tight end is what stands out to me. And, edge in round 1 is also something that I like, so I'll go there. Thank you, Grady. Hope all is well on Yes Network.
This one's from Walker. What does Carson Wentz's first game stat line have to be for there to be 0, quote, bring in Eason, end quote, tweets after the game? Says, keep up the good work with Tipsy Picks. Appreciate that and loves the pod and always loves following along.
I love it, Walker. There's no stat line whatsoever.
Right.
that could calm all of that. In all seriousness, first, you got to end the streak, right?
Yeah, you got to win that first game.
7-8 years, end the streak. But no, I don't know, 275, couple touchdowns, 67% passing. Yeah, Walker, oh boy. Now I'm already starting to think about that. See, the schedule's going to be announced here in a few weeks.
I did, yeah.
May 12th.
Love it.
But yeah, so we'll get Carson Wentz can start breaking down film on that week 1 opponent.
As if May in Indy isn't busy enough already.
Right.
Okay, this one is from Sam. What likelihood do you think the starting defensive ends for week 1 are Al-Qadim Muhammad at left defensive end and Tyquan Lewis at right defensive end? Says, I understand it's hard to predict this pre-draft.
Yeah, that's a good one. I'd say you got to go here. First, I'd say very good, honestly, because first and second down duties are different than others. Now, I think Isaac Rochelle could potentially start for Tyquan Lewis if you really want Lewis to be that 3 technique kind of rotating in. But, again, first and second down, not third down. So, yeah, I think that's a very good chance saying that those two are the starters, and I'd put Rochelle in there before Kawoko Turi.
Kevin Isaac wants to know, what are 2 positions that you would be surprised that we address in the draft and 2 positions that you would be surprised if we didn't address in the draft?
I guess kind of similar to the first one. Left tackle, DN, be surprised. Kicker, I'd be surprised if they took. Quarterback, running back, linebacker, a little bit. Defensive tackle. So, yeah, but certainly left tackle, DN would be the ones I'd be really surprised by.
All right, Kev, from Reddit, this guy says, I feel like the fact that Hilton is not a scheme fit is never brought up by anyone in the media. Teams that run Reich's offense literally do not draft guys under 6'2", without thick frames and downfield wide receiver positions. Paris Campbell, a little bit of a different story. Says, I know the understanding by the fans that fuels 85% of the disconnect about who we do and don't sign or draft. Is this something that you could speak about?
Yeah, I mean, does Hilton have the ideal frame? No. But if you can't use T.Y. Hilton, that's an issue with your scheme, to be frank. And, I mean, Frank Reich wants to throw it vertically. And T.Y. is a great vertical threat. So I don't fully agree with that, to be honest with you. Again, not the most ideal fit from a frame stance, sure. But at the same time, look at this team without T.Y. Hilton under Frank Reich. I mean, what are they, 1-8, 1-7? It's like he means something. So just because that personnel was not handpicked by you doesn't mean that your scheme is too high and mighty for it. Like, come on now.
Yeah. Why it feels like with the ample amount of vaccines and therapeutics now available to teams, players, and staffs, he wants to know why the player union is pushing for another virtual offseason with no OTAs. Feels like the NFL pulled off a full season of games and practices just fine. Full participation of OTAs can be figured out as well. Says, I hope the Colts players view OTAs as critical to building a contender and opt for in-person team sessions. I feel the union is misguided in their advocacy for virtuality. What are your thoughts there?
Well, Paul, this is, I mean, you could talk forever on this. I mean, simply players just don't want to go back to those cities for $1,000 a week or however much you get paid to take part in the voluntary part of the offseason. I mean, I think we all just have to have the understanding this is the new age of athlete and player controlment. And unless it's mandatory, unless they're getting paid a good amount, they're not going to do it. And guys would much rather train in Miami and wherever, L.A. and Dallas and wherever their off-season homes are. And
right.
I mean, it's been collectively bargained. Like, there's not a whole lot around it. Now, part of me says, well, I mean, team facilities, I would argue, are safer than where you're training around the country. And then, obviously, if you get hurt in the team facility, it's a lot different than getting hurt outside of the team facility as well. Yeah, I mean, I would love to see OTAs. I'd love to see a mandatory minicamp. But, if I'm a player, I don't have a workout bonus. Sure, you would team camaraderie and being around you. Yeah, that's great. But, Mike Chappell always reminds me of the great Edger and James quote of, I only went to college for 2.5, 3 years, but I know what the term voluntary means. Like,
it's a great quote.
It's voluntary, folks. So that's where we're at.
Jordan wants to know your thoughts on if we could see DeForest Buckner playing out on the edge at some point this season, along with Ben Banigou playing some linebacker. Says Chris Ballard said when they drafted him that he might be able to play some Sam in the future.
Yeah, that's interesting on the Buckner front. Rush downs, Chris, like it's all about matchups. If you have a tackle that you're faced that week and you feel like that tackle's weak and a bull rush would get to him or something like that, or length would get to him, sure. Of course, who would then rush inside? I don't know, Taekwon and somebody else. But, yeah, I mean, Banigou, are you really making another position switch for him? I mean, I've never seen Ben Banigou take a linebacker rep in practice. Not one. And, like, the third linebacker is just kind of weird. So I really think the Colts need him at edge. Like, you need edge guys right now. You need Ben Banigou to emerge.
Yeah.
If Ben Banigou shows up this year, oh, my gosh, that could do so much for this football team for 2021 and beyond. Because I think he's got three-down ability. Like, I think he has the capability to potentially one day be a three-down player. I don't know if I worded that right. But basically what I'm getting at is Kamoko Ture's never going to be a three-down guy. Ben Banigou, maybe.
Yeah.
Right, could. We'll see.
All right, this one's from John. He wants to know, with the talent of Kyle Pitts and how good he looks, does he make other tight ends in this draft look a little less worth what they are? And do you think that the Colts could probably get a solid tight end late in the draft due to that?
Yeah, it's like what Tiger Woods did to the game of golf. It's like, oh, those guys are still pretty freaking good.
Right.
Pitts is generational, but like if you do look at some of these tight ends and their production in college, you're like, what? Like it's not like he's just overshadowing them by that much. If there are other quality players there, you would see them ranked, I think, accurately. I just feel like in today's world, like you can get a tight end kind of early day 3. But by all accounts, just the draft depth isn't great at that position. So I hear you, John, but I don't think it's that much. That's the case.
From Randall, what's good, KB? Hope you're well. What sort of balance should we expect for the offense this year? Obviously, a stacked backfield, but the obvious upgrade at quarterback as well. Lots of touches to be had. Who gets them? Personally, he wants to see 40 run plays and RPOs included per game at least.
Whoa.
Wonder who was the last team to rush more than 50% of the time on offense. Thanks for always taking the time, and shout out to Chris. Appreciate that, Randall.
Oh, I love it, Randall. Shout out to Chris Presley for sure, and shout out to Tipsy Picks. How we doing over there?
We're starting to trend back in a positive direction. Baseball's so hard, man. Once baseball started, we kind of slumped a little bit, but we're
snowing,
working our way back up. Still positive on the year, so appreciate it.
I love it. Randall, first off, there's a lot. I mean, I don't have the numbers in front of me. I guarantee you the Ravens ran it over 50% of the time. I'm going to bet the Titans did too last year. And I'm going to venture to guess the Patriots did. Like, I think it's good. I mean, those teams are so heavy run focused. I'm a big believer in game planning week to week. Can you lean on it? Open things up in the pass game, play action, advantageous personnel groupings.
Mm-hmm.
That's where I'm kind of at, Randall. So I think it would surprise you. There are a little bit more teams than most.
All right, Kevin, Dan wants you to rank these players in terms of their 2021 contribution.
Okay.
Taekwon Lewis, Kamoko Ture, Ben Banigou, Rock Ya-Sin.
Oh, boy. Give him to me again.
Taekwon Lewis, Kamoko Ture, Ben Banigou, Rock Ya-Sin.
Oh, jeez. It's a tough question.
It is tough.
I think
you can kind of ball and cup, kind of move all these guys around a little bit.
I'll go Lewis. Boy, you hope Ture.
I know you do. Yep.
Lewis, Ture, Ya-Sin, Banigou.
All right.
I do think if Ture's healthy, he's there.
Mm-hmm.
Taekwon Lewis had a pretty good year last year. I feel like that kind of got lost in the. Don't group Taekwon Lewis in with Ture and Banigou. Like he had a really nice year.
Yeah, for what he did in the snaps that he had.
Yeah. With Rock, man, I just think it's so mental.
Yeah.
But a new possession coach, who knows?
This one is from Colton. What is going on with Mo Ali Cox? He was a monster when Indy targeted him last year, but it seems like they aren't completely sold on him being the starter. And it also seems like we're looking to add another tight end in the draft. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I mean, they haven't made a move yet at tight end, so I think they're somewhat sold on him. I mean, Ballard always loved him. Always loved him. I just think you need another tight end because Jack Doyle's 31, and I think Stephen Holder mentioned this, that he thinks this year could be Jack Doyle's last, or you heard that it's a possibility, which, that's not shocking. Like, Jack Doyle's played in the league for nearly a decade. He's had a great living, and
Yep.
He can happily ride off into the sunset with, Casey and his two sons. But, yeah, I don't think it's any sort of indictment on Mo Alley Cox. You need multiple tight ends in the system. Jack Doyle's getting up there in age, and I keep on saying you need a tight end that looks different than Mo Alley Cox. He kind of, runs differently, acts differently. That was stupid. Plays differently.
Yeah.
More of that receiving threat.
Kevin Corey loves the podcast.
Thanks, Corey. Corey Zadonis, legend. Corey Zadonis took me on a tour of Foul Golf Course at IU. Love that man.
Nice.
Love that golf course. Looks beautiful.
His question is, what is your realistic dream scenario for the Colts' first 2 picks? For instance, for him, he would love to get Jalen Phillips in round 1 and Liam Eichenberg in round 2.
I got the second shot yesterday, Chris, 10 a.m.
Mm-hmm.
Boy, that headache's starting to come.
You feeling it?
Feel it. Feel it good. Okay, give it to me again.
What's your dream scenario?
Realistic dream scenario?
Yeah.
He wants Jalen Phillips 1, Eichenberg 2.
Correct.
Ooh, boy. Man. Let's go Kwity Paye 1. And for some reason he drops Sam Cosmi 2.
All right.
You got anything you like?
I have no clue what's going to happen. I'm kind of shocked you went DN first.
Yeah,
but a future dream scenario and
I just feel like you can rely on the draft depth. And it was interesting. I thought Lance Zierlein brought this up, that the depth at edge rusher is kind of coming.
Yeah.
He feels like it's better than people are giving it credit for. So that's interesting to me. Now, obviously, you guys know Prop Swap sponsors this podcast. You go up there and you find some draft props right now. That's my favorite thing.
That is awesome.
See these over-unders, where these guys are going to get picked, how many quarterbacks in round 1, all those things. So certainly you guys got to check that out over the next week, just from an entertainment standpoint, to see where is Kyle Pitts going to be the first round quarterback taken, which wideout is going to come off the board second of the Alabama, which Alabama wideout's going to be taken first after Jamar Chase. Seemingly Chase is going to be the first wideout taken. Something is just fascinating. I love it.
Yep. All right, JJ, loyal listener, writes in.
And real quick, I think Prop Swap's got $100. If you're a new user,
yeah,
you can get $100 from them.
Love it.
Check out that promo code up on the site as well.
Love it. Who doesn't love a free $100?
Amen, brother. All right, last night, real quick.
Yeah.
Last night, I think I take a $25 home run bet on. They had a promo on FanDuel, and I'm like, all right, let me pick the game where the highest runs are going to be scored. So I find it. Okay, Rangers, Angels. Okay, okay, Mike Trout, best odds for the homer. And if you got anyone else that hit a homer in the game, you got $5.
Okay.
So it's enticing to try and win your money back in case your guy doesn't hit homer. I wake up last night at 2 a.m. A little groggy, took some NyQuil, trying to get this voice back to normal. Don't know if that was smart, but whatever. Roll over, look at my phone. I'm like, oh, no homer for Trout. I'm like, shh. Go back to bed. Wake up this morning, open up my account. I'm like, whoa, why is there money in there? I was looking at Monday. Looking at Monday's results.
He killed that.
The hardest hit home run in Major League Baseball history?
Yes.
Or, I mean, obviously.
Since the era, yeah.
Yeah. Incredible. Well, I still haven't seen the highlight. Just a bullet line drive?
No, it was like 446 feet.
Jesus.
One of those Mike Trout ones that, like,
yeah,
it comes off the bat and you're like, well,
you're
that's
just a
gone.
freak.
Like, the outfielders just look at it.
Right.
Yeah.
Gosh. I hope they get good. I'd love to see him in the playoffs.
He deserves to be there, that is for sure. All right, this one's from JJ. Chris Ballard is unpredictable with the draft. There doesn't seem to be any urgency from the owner for rapid results, in her opinion. He traded the 13th pick to go interior D lineman. Then he traded or drafted an offensive guard with the 6th overall pick. What might he do this year in the first few rounds that will surprise fans? My guess, he will pass on a left tackle until the 4th or 5th round and instead draft an interior D lineman or a linebacker. Wow. What are your thoughts there, Kev?
Yeah, that's a lot. How about take a kicker? Why not? 21 overall. Isn't that where what's his name went? Seabass?
Oh, Sebastian Janikowski. Oh, yeah.
Legend. I got a little pushback on I want to create competition for Hot Rod.
When you said draft one in the 7th round?
Yeah, and I don't know, maybe draft is a little premature, but undrafted free agent, like, I think Hot Rod had a really nice rookie year. Really nice rookie year. Especially as an undrafted free agent, replacing Vinatieri, all that. But the leg is a question. It's an unknown. Did you see what the Buffalo kicker did in the playoffs?
Right. That
rookie kicker in that weather? Their offense stalls out. That one he hit in the 4th quarter had to be over 52, 3, something like that. And the other one he hit late first half was super long. So that's where, or maybe the other one was 3rd quarter. Like, your offense is stalled out. Like, penalties happen. It's a team sport. Like, shit happens.
Right.
And so, do you have a kicker that can help you score more points? I don't know. It sounds so elementary to say it like that, but I don't know. You just bring in a kicker, and if they both go 80% or 85% on all the kicks, and that dude can make it from 55 a little bit more consistently, boom. There you go.
Need competition regardless. I mean, even when Vinatieri was clearly going to be our kicker every season, they still brought guys in.
Yeah, just
in the offseason. I mean, why not kick the tires? You have the ability to do it. You might as well.
Amen. I'd be stunned with those two positions, by the way. JJ, probably the pass catcher early. That would be something, but yeah.
All right, David wants to know if the Colts move Nelson to left tackle, do you think we go for edge or corner first? They say this draft is weak at edge, but very good at corner. If a guy like Jace Horn falls at 21 with Kwity Paye, it also at 21, who are you taking? Who helps the pass rush more? Is it Paye or is it Horn giving the edge more time to get to the quarterback?
I think it's edge. I think in this defense, we've always had the question of, like, what about corner? It's rush 4, drop 7, heavy zone look. You really got to get home with that 4. So now Irsay threw in corner a few weeks back, and as we tape this, he's about ready to go on with JMV. So we'll see if some things are a little bit different from the owner. But, yeah, I would say edge. I'd go with Paye there.
Matt mentions that you've pointed out that the Colts line and the Eagles line were comparably ranked, and Carson's completion percentage was just fine, even when Reich left.
Did I say that?
If Carson wasn't the reason for his own poor performance in 2020, what do you attribute it to? While I get the poor relationship with Doug Peterson and the organization, could that have been part of it? And that feels flimsy to me. Or maybe I'm just overlooking how young some of these guys really are.
Yeah, there were 13 or 14, different combinations for the Eagles. That's much more different than what you had here in Indianapolis. I think there was just a general disconnect, Matt. I had on Sheil Kapadia from The Athletic today when I was filling in for Dan, and he helped write that article we talked about in last week's pod about the Wentz issues, or not the Wentz issues, the Eagles-related issues, and Carson, involved with some of that stuff. Did you watch that With the Next Pick last week?
I didn't. I only saw the first episode.
So the intro last week was Wentz and Reich, and they talked about how Reich picked him up at, I don't know, a pro day in Fargo or a workout in Fargo, and they're driving together, and, like, they had the same Bible verse on their phone or the same Bible verse, like, maybe on the background or something. And, like, that stuff I don't take lightly in their relationship. Like, what? Oh, my gosh. Like, that's for people that are incredibly into their faith, that is a super, super serious bonding moment. And clearly, those two are two of those people. There was another report from Philly a few weeks back, I forget where I read it, where Jeffrey Lurie wanted, I believe him, or maybe Howie Roseman, wanted to fire Reich after the 2016 season, the first season he was there as OC. And Carson Wentz didn't want it to happen, so he didn't fire him. Rookie quarterback not wanting his OC to be fired?
Mm-hmm.
That's some pull. But that's the relationship that they have. So, I just think those two are so freaking close. So, Yeah, I mean, the O-line a little bit banged up, some disconnect. The skill group wasn't great. All those factors to me.
All right, 5 more questions for this Kevin's Corner podcast. This one's coming from Connor. Let's say the impossible happens and Paris Campbell is healthy for a good part of the season. That hurts. Who's going to get more snaps, Pittman or Campbell? Also, will our wide receiver number 1 next year affect the playing time for either? For example, if it's T.Y., does that mean more snaps for Pittman?
Oh, Pittman was out snapping Hilton last year. Yeah, I mean, Pittman for sure. He's a great blocker. You got to think about that aspect to it. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, Michael Pittman is going to play and going to play a lot. A lot.
Kevin Tristan wants to know, is Nick Sirianni an undercover agent for the Colts who was sent to Philadelphia to send Carson Wentz to Indy for a bargain? Should the Colts fans be concerned about what Chris Ballard and Frank Reich now owe Sirianni?
How about Sirianni just getting ripped today for playing rock, paper, scissors with draft prospect?
I was going to say, does Ballard just call up Sirianni and they play rock, paper, scissors to see?
Dude, if I were a draft prospect and they got me on Zoom and play rock, paper, scissors, I'd be so freaking happy. They're not asking me the same old questions they've asked every other team. I'm like, yeah, what do you think? You think I'm coming with a little scissor action? You think I got a little paper here? I do think the whole Sirianni, Wentz, Reich, I think that's all kind of weird. And part of me, again, comes back to the point of I think Wentz more or less demanded a trade.
Mm-hmm.
You know, if Reich believed, I would think Sirianni believed. And like Wentz, you know, we've heard his wife, you know, from the Midwest. I mean, there are other reasons, not just Reich-related, why he wanted to be in Indy. But, yeah, it is kind of odd.
Daniel says, I see the glaring differences in the types of strengths that we can see between our offense run by Phillip Rivers compared to Carson Wentz for both good and the bad. I know the run game will still be present and significant. As for the passing game, are we to believe the deeper style passing game with which Wentz was successful in Philly with Reich is coming compared to the shorter underneath and dump passes that we had with Phillip Rivers?
Yeah, Daniel, I mean, I do think we'll see a little bit more of that. You know, the seam passer is something I've mentioned a lot. Carson is, you know, pretty darn good with. Now, Rivers was so effective with the short underneath and dumps and ball placement with that stuff. And that's where I do think Carson has got to get a little bit better. And that's where I think in-person OTAs, to go back to Wyatt's question, would be so beneficial to the Colts just to get some on-field stuff doing that with those pass catchers in an 11-on-11 type setting.
Right. All right, a good one here from Jason. Kevin, could you explain a little more about how the compensation picks work for coaches? Since we've lost 4 coaches to the Eagles, do we get anything in return from the Eagles or the NFL? And would all these coaches not have contracts that they couldn't get out of the Colts sign-off and allow them to move?
You know, if I'm not mistaken, Jason, I'm pretty sure that's just for the minority coaches that have been promoted, like Robert Saleh to the Jets. Or David Culley to the Ravens. Like, I think when you talk compensatory picks, if I'm not mistaken, it's simply I think I have this right. If you are a minority coordinator or position coach, I guess, and you get promoted to be a head coach somewhere, that other team, like the 49ers are getting a comp pick. The Ravens are getting a comp pick. That's the impression that I'm under.
Okay.
So I guess it would have to take Marcus Brady, for example, you know, becoming a head coach somewhere else. I think.
All right, we're going to round out this podcast with an Andrew Luck question.
Oh, boy. What do we got?
From Isaac.
I guess there was some Andrew Luck news on Peter King this morning and Dan Patrick. Did you see that?
I did not.
Like they called, the Colts called Luck before they traded for Wentz just to see if there was any chance. Well, no, of course you're calling that dude.
Yeah.
You don't have your future quarterback. You're going to ask him, how's Lucy's diapers? And then boom.
Yeah, it's like, what are you calling for? Oh, yeah, by the way, while I have you.
Yeah, your lawn looked a little, I just want some spring pre-emergent to be thrown down there.
So, hey, the lunch with Jimmy was accurate, huh?
Oh, my gosh. Don't get me started.
All right, from Isaac, if you could choose between having Andrew Luck back or Carson Wentz in his 2017 MVP form, what do you choose?
Oh, boy. So Wentz hasn't torn his ACL?
Correct.
What luck am I getting?
He just says if you could have Luck back. So I'm imagining just right now.
Yeah, I take Luck. I mean, Andrew Luck won 4 playoff games in 5 trips to the playoffs, 4 trips to the playoffs. Yeah, he won 4 trips to playoffs, 4 playoff games. I mean, that's pretty good. Carson a little bit unknown in January, so yeah. I mean, I don't know age. I guess I should probably factor that in and post labrum and all that, but I'll go Andrew.
All right.
Is that all?
That is all the Twitter questions for this week.
Awesome. Hope you guys enjoyed. Lance Zierlein, like I said, no podcast next week. We will come with Lance Zierlein. This is where, I'm just losing it at this point of the pod. Beers the Bone, 8 p.m. I'll be refreshed. Shout out to Ross Lubbers, my little brother-in-law, and his beautiful fiance, Mackenzie Weiser. They're getting married this weekend.
Congratulations.
Cannot wait for that. It shall be a party. It'll be a splendid, splendid time. And then we get ready for the draft. We will have some podcasts, I should say, after the draft. Like, I'll do an emergency pod probably Thursday, maybe Friday night. We'll see. But yeah, then we'll probably come back the week after that, maybe Monday, just kind of that full recap pod after the draft. But yeah, Beers with Bowen, 8 p.m. Wednesday night, YouTube 107.5 The Fan.
Cannot wait.
He's Chris Presley. I'm Kevin Bowen. Everybody have a great weekend. We'll see you Wednesday night.